Hey there, Chad here with another episode of Kerbal Space Program in 2021. This is episode 6, and it's really just an extension of episode 5, which I had to cut a little short. It was getting long. I think it came in at 25 minutes, and this episode is about another getting close to 20, not quite. So there was a lot of information to cover. Let's join this episode already in progress, preparing to deorbit. As I look at this, here's the Space Center, and we will be hitting Apo here in a moment. Now, one thing I want to mention about these nodes, Apo and Peri. When you are at apoapsis, you're exactly opposite periapsis. It's just a mathematical fact. Expending energy when you're at this spot is the most efficient. It has to do with how orbital mechanics work, really. But spending energy here has the maximum effect on your orbit. So a lot of times you will, when you want to adjust your orbit, and we're going to deorbit here, we have a little bit of fuel left, 570 meters per second. Incidentally, deorbiting does not take much fuel at all. So we'll see that'll probably be like a 4-second burn once we do it. If we did it at apoapsis, we would use the minimum amount of fuel possible. If we do it at Peri, it will use the most fuel that would be used or necessary. But that doesn't always mean you don't want to do that. Sometimes it's the apo that you're really trying to mess with. You might be trying to pull it down. When we start to do rendezvous later, that's going to become really super important. The orbits themselves, the height of the orbit adjusts your actual speed. Instead of flying a speed, you're flying an orbital height. That's what controls how fast you're going and how you're closing in on a target. With that said, though, we have achieved orbit. Let's go ahead and plan on doing a deorbit. And I want to see if we can try to land in the sun, because I tend to be bad at that. I tend to end up landing in the dark all the time, and I don't really love that. I like to see what's going on sometimes. So what I'm going to do is put a node, and you'll notice when I zoom in here, you can see that little node guy. I can click anywhere along here and create a node. Real quick, I'm going to click here and do a warp, and you'll notice that it warps. It went up to 50, and then it'll stop in time for it to hit that spot. That's pretty nice. So that's how you accelerate time efficiently when you're doing a mission of some sort. Our mission today being orbit, and then of course return safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another maneuver point here, and I'm going to say add maneuver. And so to increase, we dragged the prograde forward. To decrease, I'm going to drag it, the retrograde forward. Now, incidentally, these are bidirectional. So if I drag prograde forward, it's an acceleration. If I drag it backward, it's the same as dragging this forward. I think you get a little more control when you're dragging forward versus backwards, but that might just be my sense of things. It might not be accurate. I'm going to want to drop this number to within the atmosphere, and in fact I'm going to drop it down to about 12,000 feet. In fact, that's below the planet. 3,000 should be fine. So what we will do is we will start to hit atmospheric drag when we get in the sun, roughly is what I would say. I don't know exactly. It doesn't really tell us where we cross that line, but I would say it'll probably be here. We should be hitting the planet probably right around the crater, I'm hoping. I'm not terribly good at judging that all the time, though. It just really depends on the angle we're coming in at. But let's see what happens. Notice, by the way, that deceleration down to bring the Peri down is only costing 90 meters a second of fuel. So literally almost none. In fact, when we have the RCS systems, which we will get eventually, we could do it with those instead of actually using rocket fuel. You could use monopropellant to slow down those engines. They're the fine control that turn a ship in space by shooting out a little bit of really, I think it's hydrogen peroxide. That's enough power to potentially deorbit us if we need to. All right. So to demonstrate a couple of things, we have this maneuver. We've shown that what the Peri is going to look like and what that's going to do to us. So this is fairly shallow. It isn't unusual to sometimes have that drop down to 12,000 below the surface of the planet, which will make this circle, of course, impact the planet. And so it gives you a little bit of an idea. But because of friction, we won't land where we think we will with that. One other thing I can do and I do want to demonstrate this, is these are, you see these pop when they're highlighted. I can also hit the center one, and I can drag it around and move it to wherever I like. Can't move backwards, of course, past where we are. Now you could move backwards, and then it'll assume that you mean the next orbit, and there's a different interface that'll kind of show orbit advancement. We're not going to mess with that today. So I'm going to slide that around just a little, make sure that I'm in the sunlight. Hopefully that's enough to catch enough atmosphere to drop us down. And then what I'm going to do, click here, and then I'm going to click it with the left mouse button. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. A right mouse button. Okay, that's not what I meant to do either. I guess what we'll do is we're going to left click out here, and we're going to do warp to next maneuver. That's what I wanted to do. If you go on the other side of that maneuver, you can either add a maneuver or you can warp to the next maneuver, and that's what we'll do. And I believe it puts you within a minute of that warp spot. We do not need to be exact on this particular thing since we're trying to deorbit, and we're not trying to hit a very specific spot like you might if you were at NASA. We're okay with just getting to the planet, and we should be safe with that. Okay, coming back to flying the rocket. We're on the non-lit side, so we don't have a lot to see right now. There's the Death Star out there. That's the moon. We cannot really see min-mist from out here. If you do see it, it'll look like one of these dots. It's a little purple. I don't see it right now. We could look at the other map and find it, but we really won't see it clearly enough from this view to know what it is. I'm going to go ahead and accelerate time. You know what? No, I'm not. We have a warp point there that we want to hit, don't we? I already figured this out. So I need to fly the rocket to have that lined up. So you'll notice it's really just on the retro is exactly what's going on. And then we're going to fire it. It's only going to fire for 2 seconds. Again, doesn't need to be exact. We're a little late for where I wanted to fire it, but that's okay. This does not need to be precise. Precision is important. For this, we just want to hit the globe, right? So that it's not something that's going to completely wipe us out. What's more important is the length of the burn at this point. And so I'm basically going to hit it until this drops down. And when it hits 0, I will kill the engine. And boom, within a meter. We could low setting for that. And then you click this guy out here. It's a check mark now, meaning, hey, you did it about right. If it can also be removed. It'll be an X. It means it hasn't really been executed yet. This one thinks it's been executed. We will close that out. And if we come look here, looking pretty good. You'll notice that we definitely are not circular, which of course not. We were at 109 kilometers at our peak, and we're going to be well in the atmosphere at 6 kilometers. Let's go ahead and accelerate time, and what will happen is it will stay accelerated until it hits the atmosphere, and then it will drop down, and that's perfectly okay, and that's going to be right about now. So it dropped to normal. Now, way up there, high up in the atmosphere, there's almost no effect. Actually, we're seeing a little more effect than I would have expected. This is dropping relatively rapidly. So 2 things I need to do. First of all, I still have this stage. I could, if I really wanted to, I could burn this, and you'll notice that the parry will drop very quickly if I do. And that would be fine. We could do that. That would basically decelerate us some. If we wanted a little more control of where we're going to land, we might want to do that. Not really necessary for what we're doing today. We've really achieved what we wanted to do today. We're just trying to get back safely now. So I'm going to eject that stage, let it go, and then I'm going to put our rocket in a retro position. And we know it's in a retro position because that is the retro icon here on the nav ball. And of course, on exactly the opposite side is the prograde position. So we want to be on the retro. And by the way, every click I'm doing there, because SAS is turned on, we're burning a little bit of electricity. We haven't used a whole lot yet, but you'll notice this number will jump as I hit that. And we don't have any solar panels or anything right now, nothing to generate it. So if we run out, we're out. So I'm going to turn off the stability system. And we're basically, we're dropping down to 50. You'll notice that the Perry is now way below the planet's surface, so we will absolutely impact the planet this time around. And we're starting to see a little bit of glow here. One thing I learned from watching Scott Manley videos, and while I am thrilled you're watching my series, I do strongly recommend his. He is an actual rocket scientist who plays this game. What I know is stuff I learned from watching his videos. The heat plume here doesn't actually burn right off of the ship like it is here. In real life, there would be several feet in front of this where it actually happens. And the air in between becomes superheated, but it's compressed, and actually the light emission is coming from several feet out where these molecules are just getting super heated from the friction. So there's a little cushion, I guess. It's probably the astronomical equivalent of what they call ground buffer, or the ground force when an airplane's landing, the air that's below the wings that's bouncing off the ground and trying to keep it up. It's kind of the same idea. Things we learned to talk about while waiting for our capsules to deorbit. We have nothing but ocean here. I think we're going to find a really good spot, and this gives us a rough estimate of where it's going to hit. This line, by the way, is a tracking line. It's for the radio communication. I don't really do a whole lot with that myself. It's certainly a neat part of the game, but not something I'm really super into. And as this drops, it'll eventually bottom out at the radius of the planet is what we'll really see there. We had zoomed way out there. I don't know why that was. Maybe I had done that. I was trying to look at where we are exactly. But man, we are hitting the broadest part of the ocean here. Jeb probably couldn't be happier, right? Nice safe touchdown, won't have any problems. Okay, we are safely falling below 900 meters per second, and we're in that upper atmosphere. As the atmosphere gets thicker, we will decelerate more and more, which seems kind of backwards, right? Because you're falling longer and longer, you'd think you'd accelerate. But the air friction really is that noticeable. In fact, when we get down here, it will drop below 200, right? And that's where we can start to think about opening parachutes. In fact, it's going to be in here where we're hitting 200, it looks like. The weight of your capsule does have some effect on the deceleration. I have seen where capsules haven't gotten below 270, and I finally pulled the trigger. There was at one point where they said you need to be below 270 before you pull the parachutes or it could damage them. I've never run into that. Not once. So that's not to say just let her rip, but just my personal experience has not been where parachutes have ripped off. All right, I think we're slow enough now. We're going to go ahead and do that. And it just kind of helps decelerate us some initially. It's just offering some additional resistance, and then when it gets down to 1,000 feet, it will blossom. The parachute is settable by right-clicking on it, and you can set the pressure where it will first allow you to open it, which is very light for us. It will only go down to 0.01 though. Can't go below that. So it won't open in a vacuum ever. And then the altitude is where it's going to blossom. 1,000 feet is pretty good. The thing is, this is above sea level, so if you're over the mountains, 1,000 feet could be below the ground, so that's something to pay attention to. Usually, I'm sorry, and this isn't feet, this is meters, my apologies, but even 1,000 meters could be below ground, so you do need to be mindful of that, and sometimes you'll need to adjust that as necessary. Okay, we are now falling steadily at 5.6 meters per second. Now this is not something that I necessarily recommend doing, but I do want to demonstrate it. If you're ever falling a little too fast, and hitting above 6 meters per second is sketchy, it can damage the capsule. I don't think in this case it would destroy the capsule and kill Jeb, but it could happen. And we are fine. We are not going to accelerate above 6 right now, but just for demonstration purposes, we can jettison the heat shield if we want. Now, if you jettison it, you don't get the cash back for it, but you do lose a little bit of weight. and let's go ahead and do that. And as you can see, we dropped from 5.6-ish, now we're at 5.1, and really get steady there. And the heat shield just splashed down. That was what that sound was, if you could hear it. Often I will watch it when I do that, and you'll just watch it drop straight, and then it'll hit and explode, and it's gone. The amount of money we would be getting returned to us for it is nominal for a safe landing, but it adds up over time, I suppose. 400 launches, you probably might want to buy another rocket with that money. Okay, that is it. The one thing we might want to do, I didn't think to turn on science earlier. We do have a crew report available for 2 science points. We'll go ahead and do that because why not? And we will recover the vessel. And we have successfully orbited Kerbin. In the next mission, we will probably do a little bit of cash management. Incidentally, let's run through this real quick. So we only earned a few points of science, but it was a few. I don't know that that's enough to buy the next node in anything, but it might be close. I don't think anything is below 45 on the next tier. We got a little bit of money back for the parts. We were pretty much on the exact opposite side of the planet based on that number there. Pretty far away. Well, here it tells us the distance, right? 1,400 kilometers. Jeb earned another experience point and got up to level 1. Level 1 would give him certain abilities with regards to navigating those or using those navigation nodes that are accidentally turned on due to a bug in the program right now, which I've been trying to limit. So I'll look up and see what level 1 gives him access to, and I will only use those in the next missions until he goes up. Okay, the only other thing I wanted to point out is we were down to 16,000 credits and we're now at 164,000 credits. That was all from that contract and then all the milestones that went around it. So we should be pretty safe on money right now. That's going to do it for today. Thank you for watching, and until next time, fair travels.